What is hypertension and why should I get tested? Some background information on hypertension. Hypertension is blood pressure that is higher than normal. The higher your blood pressure levels, the more at risk you are for other health problems such as heart disease, heart attack, and stroke. So this is something that you want to know if you have it. According to Medline Plus, it is considered high blood pressure when your systolic levels are above 130 millimeters of mercury and when your diastolic levels are above 80 millimeters of mercury, also known as 130/80. Approximately 68 million Americans have hypertension, or for a better measure, 1 in every 3 people have it. Also, around 20% of people don't even know that they have high blood pressure because it's symptomless. There are about 15 genes listed on some SNPedia that impacted the trait, and there are variations in the specific genes that impact hypertension. Some of the functions of the proteins coded by these genes that impact hypertension are coding proteins themselves, which is the ADD1 gene, and the other provides instructions for making a protein called the angiotensin II receptor type 1, which is part of a system that regulates blood pressure in the AGTR1 gene. Both of these proteins are prevalent in kidney cells, so there is a trend with altered proteins in kidney cells causing higher blood pressure. Kidneys that can't regulate and filter will cause hypertension. My SNP chip test design. For my SNP chip test, I would test 20 genetic variations because according to SNPedia, there really aren't that many variations that truly have been linked to hypertension. 2 variations that are decent predictors of hypertension are RS5186 and RS4961. The 2 versions in RS5186 are CNA. Genotype CC and AC are specifically linked to hypertension. The genotype AC has a 1.4 times increased risk of hypertension, and genotype CC has a 7.3 times increased risk of hypertension. RS5186 leads to a change in the 3' untranslated region of the angiotensin II receptor type 1 gene, AGTR1. This gene encodes the angiotensin II receptor type 1 receptor. The 2 variations of RS4961 are G and T. Genotypes GT and TT are linked to high blood pressure. GT and TT both have about a 1.8 times increased risk of high blood pressure, so these are decent indicators. This SNP encodes a change from a glycan to a tryptophan in AGTR1, which causes the gene to not be able to code the proteins correctly. Some benefits of my test. There are a few reasons that people should take the test that I've designed. First, this test can determine if you have these variations, which could tell you if you're at an increased risk of developing hypertension. Second, it could save your life because hypertension is a serious condition that could prove to be fatal. Hypertension isn't a condition that you can feel, so if you took my SNP chip test and saw that you were at an increased risk of hypertension, and then go and figure out that you do in fact have the condition, it could save you. At the very least, you should take the test and figure out if you're at an increased risk and change some parts of your lifestyle in order to try to prevent hypertension from developing. The evidence is strong supporting a connection in the variation in the trait. As I mentioned previously, in RS5186 and RS4961, there are increased risk associated with different genotypes. Both of these show strong evidence connecting the variations in the trait. News and Health's Dr. Lawrence Fine, who oversees research on the treatment and prevention of hypertension, said that when treating to the lower goal of 120 for systolic levels, the risk of having a cardiovascular complication such as heart attack or stroke was reduced by 25%, and the risk of death from all causes was reduced by 27%. This is another benefit of being tested and finding out and seeing if you're at risk for hypertension. Some limitations of my test. I would say that the biggest reason that someone may not want to take the test is because there are some known alleles that only slightly impact hypertension. Also, according to Medline Plus, more than 100 genetic variations have been associated with essential hypertension. While these have been more commonly found in people with essential hypertension than in unaffected individuals, none are the common causes of the condition. This means that a lot of these variations can be linked as true causes of hypertension. Other variations like RS 4149601 are linked with hypertension but don't have an increased risk at all. There are also many reasons outside of true variations that can cause hypertension. The CDC says that hypertension can be inherited in a number of ways, including diabetes, unhealthy diets, physical inactivity, obesity, too much alcohol, tobacco use, and through your genetics. These are all reasons that someone may not want to get the test. Warning and ethical considerations. The biggest emotional outcome of having hypertension is denial, and denial leads to not taking medications or making lifestyle changes. Though I say that your life really doesn't change with hypertension, you still have to be aware that you have it and what can come of not trying to lower your blood pressure like heart attack or stroke. So, if diagnosed with hypertension, still be aware that you have a medical condition and don't go into denial. In terms of finances, treating hypertension isn't much compared to other medical conditions. According to Matt Hoffman from HCP Live, each patient with hypertension usually spends around $2,000 to $3,000 for expenses related to having it each year. Here is some sources of evidence that I've used. Thank you, and I hope you get the test.